Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to Copper Jacket TV. So I am extremely frustrated with the Supreme Court right now. It is absolutely astonishing to me that every single year, multiple cases will be brought before the Supreme Court that deal with Second Amendment issues, and those cases just get ignored. For all intents and purposes, the Supreme Court just decides to do nothing because they'll sit on them for a while. Maybe they'll send them to a few conferences, delaying things out. And then in the end, they'll maybe just kick them back down to the lower courts, deny them or whatever. But they fail to answer significant questions that need to be answered in this country that are dealing with the Second Amendment that affect tens of millions of people. But you know what they will do quickly is they'll work on that TikTok ban pretty quick because, we don't want to lose that. They're willing to jump in for the government at just about any time. If the government or the ATF or another agency has a question about something or they want the Supreme Court to take something up, they'll take it up in no time. But when we, the people, bring them our issues, especially important ones like this, again, they just sit on them. So let's talk about what the Supreme Court has now done with Snope v. Brown and Ocean Tactical v. Rhode Island. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the status of Ocean State Tactical v. Rhode Island and Snope v. Brown. Now, if you're not aware, Snope deals with Maryland's so-called assault weapons ban, and Ocean State deals with magazine capacity limitations. So, two very important cases that have been sitting before the Supreme Court since August of 2024, and each have received delays for various reasons. In some cases, it's the state attorney general. In other cases, it's simply the Supreme Court moving them from conference to conference or rescheduling them and moving them to another conference date. The last conference for both of these cases was back on January 24th, so that was just last Friday. And that was an extremely important conference date because in order to get these two cases heard this term, the Supreme Court would have had to accept these cases last Friday. And guess what? They did not. They did not accept them. They did not deny them. They did not reschedule them. They are just simply in limbo. So once again, we have two very important cases that have not received the urgency that they require. If you take a look at just 3 states alone, 3 states out of the 50, California, Maryland, and New York, you're talking about approximately 70 million Americans living under these types of restrictions. So 70 million Americans in just 3 states alone living under these types of restrictions is not enough for the Supreme Court to act quickly. Now, I think the NAGR put it into perspective pretty well in one of their X posts where they say, with circuit splits, dozens of related cases, and the U.S. as a whole splitting in 2 wildly different directions on this issue, the cases are absolutely necessary. Millions of Americans live under these unconstitutional bans, and it must be corrected. Which is true. This absolutely must be corrected. So again, there's a few different things that could happen here. One, they could push it off to another conference, which would put us into the fall season for the Supreme Court, which potentially means they could still take it, right? So they push it off to another conference. They decide to accept it at a later date. That puts us into 2025 and then into 2026, which greatly delays any type of justice in these 2 cases at all. So it delays these cases for a significant period of time. They could also choose to still deny them. So even after all of this waiting, all of this, watching for dates and watching for orders and watching for releases, they could still choose to deny them, in which case they might just be sitting there writing their dissent. Justice Thomas, we know that Justice Thomas would take these cases, and Alito, and so they might be sitting there writing their dissents, and before they decide to deny them, these dissents need to be finished. And so that could potentially be what happens. They could still accept them, they could still deny them, or, believe it or not, they could still kick the can down the road even further and decide to conference them at even later dates. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you at this point. But what I can tell you is that it is absolutely terrible that the Supreme Court is willing to jump through hoops whenever a 3-letter agency or the government asks them to take up a case. They're willing to do that. But when the people ask them to take up a case, then it gets delayed like this, or it just gets ignored, or it gets kicked back down. It is 110% unacceptable. We have a constitution, we have a constitutional right. The Supreme Court has said in their own words that this particular right cannot be treated as a second-class right. Well, if that's the case, and you yourself say that it can't be treated like a second-class right, then treat it like any other right, like a First Amendment case that for sure would make it before the Supreme Court, but again, for some reason, you don't treat these the same. It is abhorrent to me. So, like I was saying in the beginning, both of these cases are currently sitting in limbo. We don't know what they're going to do, and so for the time being, we are just kind of sitting and waiting. And if anything changes, if anything at all happens, I will jump in front of the camera and let you guys know. But again, these are two extremely important cases. If you ask me, Snope is the most ripe case for the Supreme Court to take that I have seen come before it as of yet. This is a case where the circuit, the appellate court, absolutely overstepped its bounds, and it needs to be corrected by the Supreme Court. So if they don't take this, I don't think they'll take any case involving this. So anyway, I wanted to let you guys know about that. I wanted to rant a little bit. I want to thank you all very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, subscribe. You guys have a great day.